Welcome to the Change Champions podcast. I'm Riley. This is Ped. And together we've spent over 30 years and $100,000 of our own money building our coaching and consulting businesses. And hopefully this show helps you do the same thing a little bit faster or a little bit less. Today we're diving into a topic that's uncomfortably familiar for a lot of coaches, consultants, facilitators. You probably left a 9-to-5 job to build freedom or flexibility, but now your business feels like a worse version of the job that you left.
Yeah, we do see this all the time. You're technically self-employed, but you are stuck working 24/7, even asking clients for permission to take time off. I know that is what happened to me. That's when the moment hit me hard, where I was taking a call at 3 a.m. from San Francisco just to stay present for my client. But we'll get onto that later on in this episode.
I don't think I've heard that story either, so I'm excited. Okay, good. But so in this episode, we're breaking down why that happens, how to avoid becoming your own worst boss, and how to shift from being the business to actually building the business. So let's get into it. Pat,
Yeah,
what's the story? Fill us
well,
in.
yeah, let's start with the story then, because this would have been 2017, and I was dating my now wife internationally. So she lived in San Francisco. I live in the UK. I just got this awesome 3.5 month job. It was pretty full time. I was designing a digital boot camp for a group of digital agencies. And there was this expectation that I was available, that I was going to take calls at a time that was convenient for my clients and also be present. That's the other piece. There's also pre-pandemic stuff where when you're a consultant, there is an expectation that you're seen in your client's office to seem to be doing the work, right? And I decided to take a week off, but maybe this was me not feeling comfortable telling my clients that I was going to go off and see my girlfriend at the time, now wife. But I snuck off to San Francisco, and to maintain the illusion that I was still around, I was waking up at 3 a.m. taking calls in a basement in San Francisco.
That's crazy. But also probably so relatable for people. I mean, there's that like there's that fear. I think it's the word that comes to mind, but it's I almost it's not really just fear though, right? It's almost kind of just kind of confusion or lack of perspective. I'm blanking on the word here, but what comes to mind is I pulled up this quote because it made me think of it from Denzel Washington, or Denzel, as you might call him. Little inside joke. Uh, the quote goes, "Don't confuse movement with progress because you can run in place and not get anything done." So it's really much like it's very much that pattern of busyness that I think just more and more of us are falling into more and more of the time. I think just as the years go on. Um, but it's the difference between being active or being seen in the office, so to speak,
Yeah, right.
versus actually like building progress, building momentum, building leverage or assets like in your business. Does that make sense? Like, and going back
Yeah,
to, three.
yeah. And if I go back to that stage of being in business, or at least my mindset at the time, I was just saying yes to everything. And part of it, I've said this before. I'm not sure if I've said this in this podcast, but I saw that as a badge of honor. That I can solve a lot of different problems, including problems I don't know how to solve yet, which is, from a problem solver, I do enjoy that challenge, but needing to do that all the time, and in a way, like trying to prove that I'm valuable because I can do all these things. In a way, it stops the it stops you having the space to think about what is the thing that I can actually build that is of value, rather than being of value because of the time I'm putting into the project, which is this is the difference between being employed, being a freelancer, and being an entrepreneur, in my opinion. The first two, you're trading time for money. And in a way, I've seen this in myself and I see it in other people where then you are just a multi-talented person. You could even a metaphor that you could use around this is you have a restaurant, you're this talented chef, you can whip up any meal from anywhere in the world. You've stocked all the right ingredients, you can do anything, right? And so it's just you just show up and tell people, here are all the different things that I can cook for you. And or you ask them, can you tell me what you want me to cook for you? It just becomes really exhausting. And there's I don't know, at least for me at the time, trying to prove my worth for the most part.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to make this a right or versus wrong kind of thing because when you're starting out, uh, I think that's actually not a bad approach, to be honest. Like, if you
Well,
have zero experience, zero clients, zero whatever, then like, you go for it. Be
yeah,
like, try things, taste things, see who comes to your restaurant, and like build the menu like that. But I think it's understanding that that is just a season or like a milestone,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
moving. So really, like what we're talking about here is kind of to move this conversation forward. It's sort of the why behind it. It's like what's the faulty belief? And you talked about the employee versus freelancer, which is like okay, you're employee trading time for money, and someone else is your boss. And then freelancer, you're self-employed. You're still trading time for money, but you're the boss. Um, but there's this big chasm between that and then moving towards business owner or just building a business. And I think one of the faulty beliefs that keeps us on the wrong side, to use that word here, of that gap is, or at least it prevents us from moving forward rather than making it
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah. Okay.
Um, is the belief that, build it and they will come. It's that like the I'm just gonna do my thing and like everything will work out. It's like, well, not really. Um, you want to be able to like keep pushing this forward, right? So and I know you have thoughts on this, Ped, or a lot of them actually. But what keeps you from like what does that forward look like? What is the bridge over that gap?
Well, it depends what the gap is, right? So honestly, I think some people will, and including myself back then, probably didn't see that there was a gap. Honestly, I thought that this was what it was like to be a self-employed learning and development consultant, designing training, delivering training, training others to do training. That was the thing, right? Uh, and because I also had the mindset of I really enjoy doing great work, I thought that would just continue to give me work. And it sort of does, but it also doesn't. And I think this comes to the gap. When even though I've designed entire leadership development programs where 200 directors and deputy directors of the Ministry of Justice in the UK have gone through, I've ran strategy days for brand and marketing leaders and multinationals like Kimberly Clark and SC Johnson. And I say this not to show off, just to say like I've done some great work. I it's not like that suddenly meant that I had the next job, the next work. And it was it was recognizing the gap of, well, I'm just trading my time, that being freelancer. I'm not, there's nothing I can tell people that I can help them solve other than you've got a problem, I can solve it. So yeah, I don't know whether that's it's getting closer to this problem, this gap that we're talking about.
I mean, it's in a way there's a visibility gap. Um, And I think how we talk about it depends if it's coming from the perspective of you, the self-employed business owner, or from your potential clients as your self-employed business owner, whatever business you're in. Mm, this might be a dumb analogy, but what comes to mind is um, like the more skill you develop, the more you upskill, the more valuable your time is. You can think of that as like kind of climbing a ladder, like you're getting taller and taller, let's just say. And depending, to me, that's kind of like if you think of Mount Everest as a business, it is the tallest mountain in the world. Um, But what actually gets clients or climbers to come to Mount Everest? Like someone has to, you're told about it, or you're
Yeah.
told a story about it, where you're like, this gets into, I guess we could call it marketing and branding and things like that. But there's probably, I don't know this answer off the top of my head, but I would bet you that Mount Everest is not the most visited mountain in the world. It is probably in that regard, from a business lens, not the most successful mountain in the world, especially because a lot of climbers don't actually make it to the top. So
Yeah, right. And
that's in business model. Um, but point being is like you can get more and more and more and more skilled or become the tallest mountain in the world, but like and yes, to some degree, like you have to have a certain threshold, you have to do great work, but once you can kind of check that box, because it can just go on theoretically forever, unless you are the very best in the world out of 8 billion people, chances are there's someone better than you out there. And it's actually more about like that other gap, which is from the client perspective, which is, well, why should I climb your mountain? Why should I come to your business? Like, why, what's the story? What's the like, and if it's not clear enough, then people aren't going to visit. They're not going to buy from you. Is that,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, this is where I stumbled into that story by mistake. When I know in last week's episode, I talked about stumbling into digital transformation for charities during the pandemic. But actually, I think for me, where I started to get the where this really started to click for me was just after that, where I was thinking about, well, what do I want to get known for? What is my story? To think of it like this, I wasn't thinking about it from a story point of view, but it totally makes sense here. Is well, I had already been putting together all of my learning design processes, templates, methodologies in place for the work that I was doing, and so often I was just sharing it with other trainers and facilitators, coaches that I was collaborating with. And people enjoyed that. And there was a moment where I thought, I let me just package that up. And this was my first B2C offer back then, 3 years ago. I packaged that expertise and I found myself just really enjoying that. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is something that I enjoy doing myself and sharing with others to do. And suddenly that's when, for me at least, a lot of these things clicked. That gap that we are just talking about a few minutes ago. So this is the difference between being a freelancer and being an entrepreneur, or actually creating something of value that goes beyond my time. And
Yeah.
and it's still, I mean, it's we still encounter the time for money mindset. And there are sometimes there are times when we speak to clients or speak to potential clients where they, and this is very, very rarely, I don't know if you've come across this, I can think of a few instances where we'll talk about the outcome. And so when you work with us, we will work towards this particular outcome for you and your business. You've talked about how that would help you achieve X, Y, or Z. Great. We've talked about the value of that outcome. And yet, now and again, somebody will ask, well, how much of your time am I going to get to do that? And it's like, yeah, sure. Like we can talk through that, but like, is what's more important, the time or the outcome? And we can work through that. And that's, I don't take that as a personal assault. It's just like there's a little bit more of a mindset shift that's needed in that with that individual or those individuals to really think through, how do I want to see my business? How do I want to see my work and the value that I bring to others?
Yeah. Right. 300 hours. That's how much time I mean,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
well, like, what's that that parable or the story about like the consultant who, he comes for 5 minutes and he wax a machine with a hammer, and he's like, that'll be $10,000. And I'm like, what? And it's like, well, it's because you're not paying for my time here. You're paying for my knowledge of knowing exactly where to whack on the machine.
That, I like,
And, or there's another one with like, I think it's Da Vinci, and like he paints
yeah.
in like a minute or something, or he sketches someone, and they're like surprised at how much it costs, but it's because it's not that he's like, well, it's not the minute that you're paying me for, it's the lifetime of mastery for me to be able to do it in a minute. Because otherwise, yeah, this is that mindset. So actually, before we get to that practical asset building type stuff,
Yeah, sure.
I want to backtrack just a second because I want to make sure we're answering that question from both sides here, like emotion logic or like mindset practical, which is like, how do you avoid becoming the like your own worst boss? And it makes me think of my time at PBL, which was a mental health consultancy. And one of the things that when I was the chief operating officer there, we really harped on, not just internally, but we taught this to, other workplace cultures as well. It's very much what you're talking about, which is like, do you really care that your employee is in their seat for 8 hours per day? Or do you care that they're getting the job done?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what thing's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
more important? And if you ever had a micromanagey boss who's just like, oh, you clocked in 2 minutes late, like that's I'm writing you up, versus like you get the job done and maybe and then some. And if you're your own boss, like wouldn't you rather get the job done and then some? Like, isn't that actually better for your business, for your clients? And so, like, that's the first sort of shift, which in a way, like, there's that mindset piece. But then the second part of it is sort of like holding the boundary of not just confusing the motion or movement or progress, like we are talking about. Like, another analogy, like a rocking horse, like, you can just rock on that thing all day long. You're not going anywhere. Like, you can get me really busy. I can make myself really busy, man.
It'll be a lot of fun as well.
But you would notice if I was just rocking and not acting.
Where's that thing you said you were going to do? Hey, I'm just being
I've been, my fingers have been on every key of this keyboard all day long.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but yeah, it's just, I want to highlight, like, that's the first piece. So if you're listening to this and like, that's like a mindset shift, belief shift. Maybe I'll just say that.
A mindset.
A mind shift. Um, that's to me the first piece just before we get into, because I think what you're leading into now is more of the like, okay, well, what do those look like? What are the assets like? What do those look like? And you have an example as well, I think, or
Yeah, we were, we were thinking about our client. We won't name her. Oh, actually, we can name her because we can
look.
It's all public. Our client, Leanne, ex-client now, when we started working with her, she was working time for money. She had projects. She did a done for you service. So she executed the work with her clients. And through working with us, we got her fully booked, which was great. Then she was like, I'm now fully booked. What can I do to scale my time? And she was very clear, even from the outset, that was the general direction of travel that she wanted to go on. And we did that. We spent a good about a month of development with her to codify everything that she's been doing for the last few years independently, the stuff that she was doing internally prior to going independent, created the playbook, created a set of videos that went through that playbook with examples. And she was able to get a cohort of her ideal clients to get working on that. She managed to take on less done for you clients and took the summer off without feeling guilty, which is great. I mean, I think the way she described it is my dance card is full and I'm over the moon. We'll be pulling of that of her.
The summer off piece too, like that. I just think that's so exciting because it's in a way it goes back to the boundaries too. Like, what is full? Like, how do you know when your time is full? But it's just essentially it's getting paid for your time and getting paid enough for enough of your time. And so if we were to break this down to like 3 simple steps, again, for anyone watching or listening, if you are at the very early stages, if you haven't developed a sharp skill or polished some, like if you're still figuring things out or exploring, that's totally fine. It's more about like, okay, now I want to turn this into a business, not just a virtual assistant who can do anything and everything, or just, work for hire by my time kind of a thing. And again, if that's what you want to do, then great, keep doing that. But if you want to cross that chasm like Leanne did, then when you sort through all of that, the first thing we're looking for is your fit for purpose offer. Like it's the product market fit. It's like, what's the thing that people are actually looking for? Not necessarily what they need, but what they're looking for. That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole other episode. Yeah.
Number two is to turn those insights into systems. And this is like the developing the asset, like codifying the knowledge. There's probably more ways to explain that, but I'm gonna leave it there. And don't get me wrong, like that, it's still work. It's just the work has more meaning because there's more leverage attached to it.
But also it's the other way around, isn't it? Like if you're a freelancer, you can get paid immediately for your work. When you're turning things into a system, you're doing the research and development costs of that upfront.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a later payoff.
Yeah. It's an investment. I mean, it really is what you're investing in your business. And if you are self-employed, you might be taking some of your time that could be paid and maybe some of your money or your energy, or like you're taking resources and you are investing them into your soon to be business. That's the difference. That's how you can cross the chasm. So that's number two. And the third thing then is I'm gonna try hard not to go into my sports psychology mode here. But it's shifting from being reactive to strategic, or reactive to responsive. And so to me, that's the foresight. It's understanding that there's a payoff down the road, and it's like that marshmallow experiment. Are you familiar with the marshmallow experiment, Ped?
Yeah, I am, but maybe the listeners might want to hear it.
Well, I'll just say it has to do with delayed gratification.
There you go.
Okay. And the simplest explanation of it, still worth typing it into YouTube, and you'll get a laugh out of watching little kids struggle to not eat a marshmallow. It's
with the promise of 2 marshmallows, leave it on the table for I don't know, like 15 minutes or something like that.
And there's research that backs up why you want to delay gratification, all the good things that come with it. But to keep that short, it is just for your business. The reason it is worth it is because you're developing this asset that it's kind of like, instead of trading your time for golden eggs, you were building the golden goose so that you can just forever have the golden eggs, just to keep, it's like it compounds over time.
Nice.
So it turns into, actually the big takeaway from that too is like, instead of time being an enemy or like an adversary, time becomes your ally in that equation.
Yeah. So making the time worth more in a way, that way.
Yes. Takes time to do. And it takes time, but it's like, it is worth doing.
Yeah. Look, if any of this sounds all too familiar, it probably means that you're actually probably closer to solving this problem, or closer than you think to it. And really the big takeaway for me is you don't need to hustle any harder. You just need to stop reinventing the wheel and start designing a business that just stops you from having to be reactive, like Riley was saying, and a business where you just can't take a break, because if you do, then your clients, including your perception of who you need to be as the freelancer, gets squashed. So yeah, it is something that you are closer to achieving than not, if that is where you are.
It's just about taking the right steps, right? And so speaking of achievement and progress and self-improvement, we're always looking to improve and not be reactive as well. So we'd love to hear from you guys, if you're watching or listening, which part of today's episode hit the hardest for you? Which thing do you want to hear more about? Any of those kinds of thoughts, questions, comments, send us a message or DM, comment below, wherever you're listening or watching this. Reach out to us. We'd actually read and reply to every single one of those. And if you're not already on our newsletter, why not? That's where we share more tools and stories and resources like this. And there's also going to be invites to work more closely with us if that's ever something that you wanted as well.
Cool. And look, if it's not clear already, this is exactly the type of thing we help our clients with. We help them turn their expertise, whatever that might be, around helping other people grow, supporting them in their businesses or individually, to help them do more of the work they love and stop being the business and start building one.
Tune in next time.